The clicking started 17 minutes ago and has not stopped. Private Donnelly died with his bayonet buried in something that used to have a face, and when I pulled his body back into the firing pit, I found he was still breathing. Still breathing, with most of his chest cavity relocated to the mud beside him, his lungs visible through the ruin of his flak armor, expanding and contracting in wet red motions that made no anatomical sense. He looked at me. His mouth moved. The clicking drowned out whatever he was trying to say, and I held his hand until the breathing stopped, which took another 43 seconds. I counted. We count everything now. Counting is all we have left. Corporal Henderson is screaming orders from the secondary position, but his voice sounds wrong. Too high. The man has been fighting alongside me for 3 years across 4 different hellholes, and I have never heard his voice crack like that. He is telling us to fix bayonets, and I want to laugh because we fixed bayonets an hour ago when the last ammunition crate came up empty and Sergeant Vasquez put her sidearm in her mouth rather than face what comes next. We have been standing here with 3 feet of sharpened steel attached to our useless rifles, waiting for the clicking to resolve itself into shapes, and the shapes into death. The trench is called Position Gamma 7 on the tactical maps, but we call it the coffin. 400 meters of reinforced ferrocrete walls sunk into the ash plains of this world, whose name I stopped caring about 6 days ago. The walls are 12 feet high. The Xenos have been piling their dead against them for the past 2 hours, building ramps of chitin and cooling meat, and I can see the top of the nearest pile from where I stand. It will crest the wall in approximately 11 minutes if they maintain their current rate of suicide. I have done the mathematics 3 times. The answer does not change. Lieutenant Garrett gave his last order 92 minutes ago, just before a bioprojectile removed most of his skull and painted the command bunker's wall with everything he had ever known or loved or believed. The order was simple. The order was impossible. The order is the only thing keeping my legs from buckling, because if I think about what the order actually means, I will join Vasquez in the mud with a hole where my higher functions used to be. Hold the line. That is what he said. Hold the line until relief arrives. He said this while knowing the relief column was destroyed 18 hours ago. He said this while looking at a tactical display showing 40,000 biosignatures converging on our position. He said this while the ammunition count on our supply cogitator read 0 across all categories. He said this because saying anything else would have been admitting that we are already dead, that we have been dead since the supply drop failed, that our continued existence is a clerical error the universe will correct shortly. So we hold the line. Reyes has not moved in 6 minutes. He is standing at the observation slit in the forward bunker, and he has not moved, and I am starting to understand that something is wrong with him beyond the normal wrongness of this situation. His rifle hangs loose in his hands. His eyes are fixed on something I cannot see from my position. When I call his name, he does not respond. When I call again, louder, Henderson tells me to shut up and conserve my energy, and I want to explain that Reyes is experiencing something that requires immediate intervention. But the clicking swells to a new pitch and everyone drops into combat stance and the conversation dies. The first wave of today crested the eastern wall at 0347 hours. We had ammunition then, we had hope then, we had the belief that if we just killed enough of them, the rest would learn fear and retreat. That belief lasted approximately 45 minutes before we understood that the Xenos do not experience fear. They do not experience anything except hunger and the collective imperative of their hive mind. Each one we killed was replaced by 3 more. Each position we held was eventually overrun by simple mathematics. We lost the eastern wall. We lost the northern bunker complex. We lost 18 soldiers whose names I had memorized and whose faces are now indistinguishable from the churned mud and viscera coating every surface of this position. The clicking resolves into shapes. They come over the wall in a wave of blade limbs and compound eyes, and I am moving before my brain processes the visual information. 3 months of combat reflexes take over. My bayonet finds the join between chitin plates on the first one, and I twist the way Sergeant Morrison taught me back on the training grounds, and something ruptures inside the creature that sprays across my face. It smells like rotting vegetation and copper. The second one catches my rifle barrel with a claw limb, and I release the weapon rather than be pulled forward, and my combat knife is in my hand without conscious thought. The creature lunges. I step inside its reach. The blade finds its eye cluster. It dies, making a sound that I will hear in whatever dreams remain to me. Henderson goes down under 3 of them, and his screaming joins the clicking in a harmony of human anguish and alien hunger. I cannot reach him. I am fighting 2 more, and my knife is stuck in the thorax of one while the other tries to remove my arm from my shoulder. Someone crashes into the creature from the side. Kovacs. Her entrenching tool splits the thing's skull equivalent in a spray of yellow ichor, and she is shouting something about Reyes, something about the bunker, something I cannot process because a 4th Xenos is climbing over the bodies of the first 2, and I am out of weapons except my hands. I shatter my knuckles on its carapace. The pain is distant, academic, a problem for future versions of myself who will have the luxury of caring about minor injuries. The creature's mandibles close around my forearm, and the pressure is immense, and I can feel the bones beginning to separate under the serrated grip. Then Kovacs is there with her entrenching tool, and the mandibles fall away, still clenched around my arm, and we are running because the wall is breached in 17 places, and holding this section is no longer possible. The secondary trench line is 40 meters behind us. 40 meters of open ground covered in bodies and shell craters, and things I refuse to identify. We run. Something catches Morrison in the back and he goes down without a sound, and I do not stop because stopping means joining him. The clicking is everywhere now. The clicking is inside my skull. The clicking has become the fundamental frequency of the universe, and everything else is just interference. I dive into the secondary trench and land on something soft that grunts. Jenkins. His leg is bent at an angle that suggests compound fracture, and he is holding a length of sharpened pipe like a spear, and his eyes have the flat acceptance of someone who has made peace with what comes next. Kovacs lands beside me. Her face is a mask of yellow and red fluids, Xenos and human mixed together, and she is still holding her entrenching tool like a holy relic. The Vox unit in the command post is receiving something. I hear it because the clicking has paused. They do that sometimes. They pause to consume what they have killed, to replenish biomass, to do whatever unknowable thing their hive mind requires. The pauses last between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. This one has lasted 47 seconds. During that 47 seconds of relative silence, I hear the Vox crackling with a transmission that should not exist. The relief column was destroyed. I know this. I saw the tactical update. I watched the icons representing 9,000 soldiers blink out of existence over a span of 17 minutes. There is no one left to send. Transmissions. There is no one left at all except us, and whatever fragments of humanity are scattered across this doomed world, waiting for the swarm to find them. But the Vox is receiving something. Kovacs hears it too. Her head snaps toward the command bunker, and I see the same desperate, impossible hope flickering in her eyes that I feel in my chest. Hope is dangerous here. Hope makes you careless. Hope makes you believe that survival is possible, and that belief is a cruelty that the universe does not deserve to inflict. But I am moving toward the command bunker anyway, because the transmission might contain information, might contain coordinates, might contain anything other than the certainty of death by chitin and claw. The bunker stinks of blood and fear sweat and something else. Burned electronics. Lieutenant Garrett's body is still slumped in the corner where it fell, and I step over him without looking, because looking would require acknowledging the waste, the pointlessness, the absolute futility of his sacrifice. The Vox unit is mounted on the wall beside a tactical display that shows nothing but static. I adjust the frequency. The crackling resolves into words. Position 17, repeat. Survivors at position 17, ammunition stores intact. Coordinates, follow. The transmission cuts out. I wait. The clicking resumes outside, and I hear the sound of blade limbs testing the walls, probing for weakness. And I know we have approximately 4 minutes before the next assault. The Vox crackles again. Anyone receiving? Position 17, we have ammunition, we have defenses, please respond. Position 17 is 800 meters to the southwest, 800 meters across open ground that is currently being consumed by a tide of alien hunger, 800 meters that might as well be 800 light years for all the chance we have of covering that distance alive. But the transmission mentioned ammunition. The transmission mentioned defenses. The transmission mentioned survival, and survival is an addiction that proves impossible to abandon even when every logical analysis confirms its impossibility. I return to the trench line. Kovacs is crouched beside Jenkins, doing something to his broken leg with strips of fabric torn from a dead soldier's uniform. There are 7 of us left, 7 out of the 243 who manned this position at dawn, 7 warm bodies with functioning limbs, and the will to continue fighting despite the mathematical certainty of defeat. I look at each of them. Henderson is still alive, though his left arm hangs useless, and there is a wound on his scalp that should probably be bandaged. Palmer and Torres are manning the secondary wall, their bayonets pointed at the growing mound of Xenos dead that will eventually provide a ramp for the living. Wu is sitting in the mud staring at nothing, her hands wrapped around a knife she has not cleaned since the first assault, and Reyes is still standing at his observation post. His eyes are still fixed on something beyond the wall. His mouth is moving now, forming words I cannot hear, and I feel the cold crawl of wrongness up my spine that I have been trying to ignore since this morning. There is a position 800 meters southwest, I say. They have ammunition, they are calling for survivors. Nobody responds. The clicking is growing louder again. The pause is ending. We can reach it, I continue, knowing I am lying, knowing we will probably die in the first 100 meters, knowing it does not matter because staying here is not a survival option either. If we move during the next feeding pause, if we stay together, if we are fast, Henderson laughs. It is not a pleasant sound. 800 meters, he says. Across that. He gestures toward the open ground beyond the trench, toward the carpet of bodies and feeding Xenos that stretches to every horizon, with 7 people, 2 of whom cannot walk without assistance. During a feeding pause that will last 3 minutes at most, he laughs again. Vasquez had the right idea. Vasquez is dead, I say. We are not yet. Give it time. Kovacs finishes her work on Jenkins's leg and stands. Her face is unreadable beneath the crust of dried fluids. I heard the transmission, she says. Position 17. That is Garrison Command. That is where the armor was stationed before the main assault. If anyone has supplies, they will. If anyone is alive there, Torres says from the wall. If the transmission is not a recording, if it is not a trap, the Xenos are capable of mimicry. We have all seen the reports. I have seen the reports. The bioforms possess vocal apparatus capable of reproducing human speech. They have used this capability to lure survivors into ambushes on 7 documented occasions. The transmission could be legitimate. The transmission could be death wearing a familiar voice. There is no way to know without attempting to reach the position, and attempting to reach the position carries a survival probability I estimate at less than 12%. But staying here carries a survival probability of 0. The clicking resolves into shapes again, and this time I recognize the variant leading the assault. They are larger than the standard bioforms, their carapace is ridged with additional armoring, their limb configurations optimized for breaching fortified positions, warrior forms. The tactical briefings describe them as shock troops, deployed when the hive mind determines that conventional forces cannot achieve objectives efficiently. Their presence means the swarm has grown impatient with our continued existence. Their presence means the next assault will be the last one we face in this position. We kill 11 of them before they breach the wall. I lose my combat knife in the second one and switch to a length of rebar I pull from a damaged section of fortification. The metal sings in my hands as it connects with chitin, a discordant hymn of violence and desperation. Palmer takes a talon through the throat and dies, making sounds that I will never unhear. Torres goes down under 3 of them. And when we finally kill the last creature in this wave, we find only scattered fragments where she used to be. 5 of us now. Henderson, Kovacs, Jenkins, Wu and me. 5 warm bodies with functioning limbs. No 4. Jenkins cannot walk, and his eyes have taken on the glassy distance that suggests shock has claimed him more thoroughly than any physical injury. We will have to carry him or leave him, and I know what the tactical mathematics demand, and I know I will not obey them. The next pause, I say. We move in the next pause. The clicking fades. The creatures withdraw to consume their dead and ours, to recycle the biomass, to prepare for the next assault. I count the seconds. The pause lasts 2 minutes and 17 seconds. Not enough. The next one might be longer. The next one might be 3 minutes or 4 or 5, and 3 minutes is enough to cover 200 meters if we run without stopping, without looking back, without acknowledging the certainty of pursuit. We wait. Reyes finally moves. His head turns toward me, and his eyes are wrong, not the wrong of terror or shock or madness, but a different wrong, a fundamental wrong, like looking at a familiar face and recognizing that the person behind it is no longer present. His mouth is still moving, still forming words, and I realize he is counting. Reyes, I say carefully, what are you counting? He does not respond. His mouth continues its silent litany, numbers flowing past his lips in an endless sequence. I step closer. His eyes track my movement, but there is no recognition in them. No awareness, no humanity. What happened to him? Kovacs asks. I do not know. I do not want to know. But I remember that Reyes was on perimeter duty last night, alone in observation post 6, and I remember that the night was filled with sounds that could not be identified. Clicking, chittering, something else. Something that sounded almost like singing, if singing could be stripped of melody and rendered into pure frequency. The Xenos are capable of more than physical violence. This is documented. Their hive mind can reach across distances and touch other minds, can plant suggestions, can rewrite the basic operating parameters of sentient thought. I have read reports of soldiers who turned their weapons on their own positions after exposure to certain bioforms. I have read reports of entire units that walked calmly into the swarm, their faces peaceful, their minds no longer their own. Reyes was alone last night. Reyes heard something. Reyes is still hearing it. We have to leave him, Henderson says quietly. His voice carries no emotion. He is stating a tactical fact. No, I say. He is compromised. Whatever is in his head, it is not friendly. Bringing him with us is bringing a threat directly into our formation. I said no. Henderson does not argue further. He has known me long enough to recognize when argument is futile. Instead, he begins gathering what supplies we can carry. Water, the few ration packs that survived the secondary supply bunker's destruction, medical equipment, a single flare that might buy us seconds of illumination if we need it. Everything else we leave behind, including the bodies of friends we will never properly bury. The clicking resumes. The pause lasted 2 minutes and 41 seconds, not long enough, but I have been watching the patterns, tracking the intervals, and I believe the next pause will be longer. The swarm is consuming significant biomass. The warrior forms require more processing than standard creatures. If my calculations are correct, the next pause will last between 3 and 4 minutes, 3 to 4 minutes to cover 800 meters, while carrying a man with a broken leg and escorting another whose mind may know. Longer be his own. The assault comes in 3 waves. The first wave is standard bioforms, small and fast, their role to identify weaknesses and force us to expend energy on defense. We kill them with improvised weapons and desperate fury. The second wave is larger creatures, their blade limbs capable of punching through flak armor, their carapaces resistant to anything except targeted strikes to vulnerable joints. Wu takes a claw through her shoulder and keeps fighting, her knife finding throats and eye clusters with mechanical precision. The third wave is the warrior forms again, and this time there are more of them, and our position begins to collapse. Henderson goes down. I think he dies. I cannot confirm because I am too busy fighting, too busy surviving, too busy counting the seconds until the assault pauses. Kovacs screams something about the wall, about the breach, about something behind me, and I turn just in time to see a warrior form bearing down on my position. It is massive. Its blade limbs are stained with what I recognize as human blood. Its compound eyes reflect my face back at me, twisted and multiplied into 1,000 iterations of the same terrified expression. I swing my rebar. The creature catches it. The metal shears away, leaving me holding a stub of twisted steel. The warrior form rears back to strike, and I know this is the moment I die, and I am surprised to find that I am not afraid. The fear burned out of me somewhere in the last 3 hours, leaving only a cold acceptance and a lingering frustration that I will not live to see the Emperor's light again. The creature's head explodes. I am covered in ichor and fragments of chitin and something that might be brain equivalent. Through the spray, I see Reyes. He is holding a length of sharpened metal that used to be a support strut. He is no longer counting. His eyes are focused, clear, present in a way they have not been since this morning. He looks at me with an expression I cannot interpret. "I can hear them," he says. "I can hear everything they are planning. I know when the next pause will come. I know exactly how long we have." The clicking stops. 4 minutes and 11 seconds, Reyes says. "Starting now. We run." The open ground between position Gamma 7 and position 17 is a nightmare landscape of cratered earth and scattered bodies. I carry Jenkins over my shoulder in a fireman's carry that sends screaming pain through my shattered hand. Wu runs beside me, her wounded shoulder leaving a trail of blood that I hope does not attract pursuit. Kovacs takes point, her entrenching tool ready, her path weaving between obstacles with a grace that suggests either tactical genius or divine intervention. And Reyes walks ahead of us all, his pace steady, his head cocked as if listening to music only he can hear. He guides us around concentrations of feeding Xenos. He warns us when creatures stir. He counts down the seconds remaining in a voice that no longer sounds entirely human. 3 minutes 42 seconds. Turn left here. There are 7 bioforms in direct path. Avoidance adds 4 seconds to travel time. Acceptable. I do not question his knowledge. I do not have the luxury of skepticism. Whatever happened to Reyes last night, whatever connection was established between his mind and the hive consciousness, it is keeping us alive. The ethical implications can be examined later, assuming later exists. The Vox transmission continues to cycle through the static on a captured handset Kovacs retrieved from the command bunker. The voice is male, middle-aged, carrying the clipped efficiency of Imperial military communication. Position 17, survivors, ammunition, defenses, the words loop every 90 seconds, a beacon of hope in the static-filled darkness. We cover 400 meters in the first 2 minutes. The feeding pause is ending. I can hear the clicking resuming behind us, the sound growing in volume and complexity. As the swarm finishes its consumption and prepares for the next phase of assault, Reyes increases his pace. His countdown accelerates. 2 minutes 1 second. Pursuit beginning. 700 meters remaining. Corridor opening between bioform clusters in 12 seconds. Move left now. We move left. The corridor opens. We run through a gap in the Xenos formations that should not exist, that closes behind us with a snapping of blade limbs and a chittering of frustrated hunger. 1 minute 44 seconds, 500 meters. Terrain elevation increasing. Defensive positions visible ahead. Continue on current heading. I can see position 17 now. It is larger than Gamma 7, a fortified command structure surrounded by secondary bunkers and anti-aircraft emplacements. The walls are intact. The gun positions are manned. I can see movement on the parapets, human shapes preparing to receive either survivors or threats. 1 minute 12 seconds, 300 meters, pause ending in approximately 40 seconds, sprint recommended. We sprint. Jenkins bounces on my shoulder with every stride, and the pain in my hand has transcended sensation to become a pure white noise that fills my skull. My lungs burn, my legs are failing, the clicking is growing louder behind us, the pursuit closing the distance with each passing second. I can hear the blade limbs churning the earth, can hear the chittering communication between hunting packs, can hear the sound of 40,000 organisms coordinating their hunger toward our destruction. 30 seconds. 150 meters, gate opening, identification being processed. You are recognized as friendly. Do not deviate from current course. The gates of position 17 swing open. Figures emerge, their weapons raised, their voices calling instructions I cannot process through the roar of blood in my ears. We cross the threshold with approximately 3 seconds remaining in Reyes's countdown, and the gates close behind us with a sound of grinding ferrocrete and locking mechanisms. The clicking stops at the wall. I collapse. Jenkins slides from my shoulder and lands in the mud beside me, and I do not have the strength to check if he is still alive. I lie on my back and stare at the grey sky and breathe in air that tastes of smoke and blood and something else. Victory. Not final victory, not even temporary victory, but survival. The simple act of continuing to exist for another minute, another hour, another day. Hands help me up. Faces swim into focus. A medic is examining my hand with expressions that suggest the damage is worse than I realized. Someone is asking me questions about the tactical situation at Gamma 7, about survivor counts, about Xenos force composition. I answer automatically, my voice distant in my own ears, my mind still caught in the space between running and dying. Position 17 is larger than I expected. The garrison has maybe 200 soldiers, most of them in better condition than we were. They have ammunition, they have crew-served weapons, they have armored vehicles that survived the initial assault. They have supplies enough for a sustained defense. They also have a problem. I learn this over the next hour, as the medics work on my hand and debrief officers extract what tactical intelligence I can provide. Position 17 is surrounded. The swarm did not pursue us across the open ground because they are already here, massed around the walls in numbers that dwarf what we faced at Gamma 7. The relief column that was destroyed included the only forces capable of extracting this position. The orbital support that might have provided air cover was eliminated in the opening hours of the invasion. Position 17 is not a rescue. Position 17 is simply a larger coffin with better amenities. But we have ammunition now. The colonel in charge of the garrison is named Warren. She is 53 years old according to the service record someone shows me, with 31 years of continuous combat operations across 14 different war zones. Her face carries the lines of someone who has seen the worst humanity and its enemies can offer and has decided to continue fighting anyway. When she looks at me, I see recognition, not personal recognition, the recognition of one soldier meeting another on the far side of too many battles. You held Gamma 7 for 18 hours after ammunition ran dry, she says. It is not a question. We held it until holding it was no longer possible, I say. Then we came here. The Vox transmission, yes, she nods. We have been broadcasting since the initial assault. You are the first survivors to reach us. We had begun to believe no one was left. There may be others, other positions, other survivors, there may be. Her voice carries no hope, but the swarm has learned our transmission patterns. They are jamming most frequencies now. We can send, but we cannot receive. Anyone else who is still alive is as alone as we were. The clicking begins again outside the walls. Colonel Warren assigns us to the secondary defense line, the inner ring of fortifications that will become relevant when the outer walls fall. She does not say if, she says when. The mathematics are the same here as they were at Gamma 7. The numbers do not favor survival. The only difference is the timeline. Reyes is taken to the medical wing for evaluation. The doctors find nothing wrong with him physically, but his behavior continues to concern them. He speaks of things he should not know. He predicts assault patterns before they manifest. He describes the internal organization of the hive mind in terms that no human should be capable of comprehending. The senior medical officer recommends quarantine. Colonel Warren overrides the recommendation. Whatever is in his head, she says, it is keeping him alive. It is keeping all of you alive. I will take that advantage, regardless of its source. I am not sure this is a wise decision, but I am also not sure wisdom matters anymore. We are defending a position that cannot be defended against a force that cannot be stopped. The choices available to us exist on a spectrum between futile and slightly less futile. The first assault against Position 17 comes at nightfall. It is different from the attacks at Gamma 7, more coordinated, more intelligent. The swarm has been learning from its failures, adapting its tactics to the specific defensive capabilities it faces. The bioforms come in waves timed to deplete our ammunition at specific positions. They target crew-served weapons first, sending specialized creatures designed to infiltrate and destroy emplaced armaments. They use their dead as cover, building walls of corpses, behind which living forces advance with impunity. But we have ammunition. The sound of las fire is the most beautiful thing I have heard in 3 days. The crack of bolts releasing energy, the whine of rapid discharge, the hiss of Xenos flesh cooking under concentrated beams. I man a firing position on the secondary wall and burn through power packs with the abandon of someone who has spent too long fighting without resources. The creatures die in waves, the bodies pile, and for a few precious hours it feels like victory is possible. The outer wall holds until midnight. The breach comes in the northeastern sector, where a concentrated force of warrior forms overwhelms the defenses through sheer mass and momentum. The soldiers manning that position die fighting, their final transmissions cut off mid-word as blade limbs find their flesh. We fall back to the secondary line. The pattern repeats. Kovacs dies in the retreat. I do not see it happen. I hear her voice on the Vox, calling coordinates, calling warnings, calling for covering fire that arrives too late. When I reach her position, I find only her entrenching tool and a spreading stain that used to be a person I knew. I take the tool. It feels right in my hand. It feels like carrying forward something that matters. Dawn comes with the swarm massing for another assault. Colonel Warren calls a command meeting in what remains of the central bunker. There are perhaps 70 soldiers left capable of fighting. Ammunition is adequate for another 8 to 12 hours of sustained combat, depending on assault intensity. Medical supplies are critically low. Water recycling has been damaged. The situation is, in her words, suboptimal. We have one remaining option, she says, the underground tunnels connecting this position to the civilian shelters 2 kilometers north. They were intended for evacuation scenarios. The tunnels may still be intact. And if they are not, someone asks, then we die in the tunnels instead of on the walls. The outcome is the same. The location is different. Nobody argues. The evacuation begins at noon. 20 soldiers stay behind to man the walls and create the impression of continued defense. They know they will not survive. They volunteer anyway. I do not understand this. I understand this completely. The mathematics of sacrifice are different from the mathematics of survival. They operate on values that cannot be calculated. I am assigned to the evacuation column. Jenkins is loaded onto a stretcher. Wu's shoulder has been treated enough for her to fire a weapon left-handed. And Reyes stops at the tunnel entrance and turns back toward the walls. His eyes have that distant quality again, the looking without seeing that characterized his state at Gamma 7. His mouth is moving. They know, he says. They know about the tunnels. They are already there. Colonel Warren freezes. What do you mean, the hive mind? It has anticipated this response. There are bioforms waiting in the tunnel network. They entered through the civilian end. They are positioned at intervals to maximize casualties during transit. Silence. The sound of clicking outside the walls. The sound of 40,000 organisms waiting for the walls to fall. How do you know this? Colonel Warren asks. Reyes does not answer directly. Instead, he closes his eyes and speaks in a voice that is not quite his own. 1,100 meters from this entrance, a junction with 3 passages, 24 bioforms in concealment, 200 meters beyond, a collapsed section requiring passage through maintenance shafts, 42 bioforms waiting at the exit. 400 meters after that, he continues for 3 minutes. His description is precise, detailed, impossible without direct access to the enemy's tactical disposition. When he finishes, he opens his eyes and looks at Colonel Warren with an expression of absolute exhaustion. I am still me, he says, but I can hear them. Since last night, since the singing. They do not know I am listening. They think I am one of them now. They are wrong, but they will realize their error soon. How soon? When my heart stops, the connection will be severed. They will understand they were deceived. They will adapt. They will never make this mistake again. I understand what he is saying, the cold precision of it, the sacrifice encoded in his words. No, I say. Reyes looks at me. For a moment I see the man I have fought beside for 3 years, the man who taught me the 17 steps to field strip a Las rifle, the man who shared his rations when mine were contaminated, the man who carried me for 2 kilometers on a moon whose name I have forgotten when my legs were too wounded to support my weight. The tunnels are not an option, he says quietly, but they do not know. I know they are not an option. Their forces are committed to that strategy. The walls are weaker than they should be. If you attack now while they wait for you underground, you might reach the eastern defensive line. 1,400 meters, the guns there are still intact. The ammunition caches were never breached. How do you know they have not adjusted? Colonel Warren asks. Because I can hear them making the adjustment now. You have approximately 4 minutes before the redeployment is complete. 4 minutes, 1,400 meters, 70 soldiers against an enemy expecting us to flee underground. Colonel Warren makes her decision in less than 3 seconds. The assault begins before the swarm can complete its redeployment. We pour from the gates in a formation designed to maximize speed and minimize exposure, a wedge of desperate humanity driving into the surprised Xenos forces with every weapon we have left. The creatures react, but slowly. Their tactical calculus was built around an enemy retreating into tunnels. An enemy attacking into their strength does not compute. Reyes runs at the front of the formation. His voice calls warnings, identifies threats, guides our advance through gaps in the enemy lines that close seconds after we pass through them. He is burning through whatever time the connection has granted him, using the hive mind's own awareness against it, fighting a war of information that the swarm has never encountered before. We lose soldiers. I do not count how many. Counting belongs to the aftermath, to the luxury of survival. Here, there is only movement and violence, and the desperate need to reach the eastern line before the enemy reorganizes. 1,100 meters. The swarm begins to react. Bioforms converge from all directions, abandoning the tunnel ambush, pouring toward our position with the fury of a violated hive mind. 900 meters. Reyes stumbles. His voice becomes erratic, the precision of his intelligence fragmenting into confusion. The connection is failing. The swarm is recognizing the intrusion. They are fighting back on frequencies that only Reyes can perceive. 600 meters. The eastern line becomes visible through the smoke and dust. The guns are there. The ammunition is there. Survival is there, measured in meters that might as well be light years. 400 meters. Reyes stops running. He turns to face the pursuing swarm with an expression of profound peace. His mouth forms words I cannot hear over the clicking and the gunfire and the screaming. "Keep running," Colonel Warren shouts. "Do not stop. Do not look back." I look back. Reyes is walking toward the swarm. His arms are spread wide. His head is tilted back, his eyes fixed on the gray sky above. The bioforms hesitate. I can see the confusion in their movements, the uncertainty as their hive mind processes input that contradicts everything they understand about prey behavior. Something happens. I do not know how to describe what I see. Reyes's body convulses. Light pours from his eyes, his mouth, his ears. The clicking stops. For one impossible moment, the swarm freezes in perfect stillness, 40,000 organisms locked in place by something that has seized control of their collective consciousness. Then Reyes falls, and the swarm falls with him. Not all of them, not permanently, but enough of them for long enough that we reach the eastern line, that we man the guns, that we begin firing into the stunned and disorganized mass with accuracy that would have been impossible moments before. The battle continues for another 4 hours. The swarm recovers from whatever Reyes did to them, but the recovery is slow and imperfect. Their coordination is damaged. Their tactical responses are delayed. They fight like individuals, rather than a unified organism, and against individual creatures, we have advantages that matter. When the fighting ends, there are 31 of us left standing. I find Reyes's body after the last Xenos retreats beyond our effective weapons range. He is lying in the ash exactly where he fell, his arms still spread, his face turned toward the sky. There is no visible wound, no sign of violence, but his eyes are open and empty, and when I touch his chest, there is nothing there. Heartbeat, no breath. No trace of the man who sacrificed his mind to give us a chance at survival. The connection killed him, or he killed the connection, or something happened between those two options that my understanding cannot encompass. What I know is this: Reyes heard the enemy singing, and instead of letting that song consume him, he sang back. He became a weapon they could not anticipate. He used their own strength against them in a way that cost him everything he was and might have been. Colonel Warren orders defensive positions established. The eastern line holds advantages that our previous positions lacked: elevation, clear sight lines, intact heavy weapons. If the swarm returns in force, we will likely die, but we will die harder than we would have died otherwise, and sometimes that is all victory looks like. The Vox crackles with new transmissions, other survivors picking up our signal, responding to the knowledge that we are still alive. Position 12, 14 kilometers north, with 43 soldiers and limited ammunition. Position 29, in the industrial sector, holding a manufactorum with access to last cells and basic repair facilities. Position 6, a shrine complex, where the faithful have been fighting with improvised weapons and sheer determination for 3 days without relief. We are not alone. We were never alone. The Imperium is everywhere, scattered across this world in pockets of resistance that refused to die when dying was the logical response. And now we know each other exist. Now we can coordinate. Now we can fight as a collective rather than isolated fragments. The clicking resumes in the distance. The swarm is regrouping. The mathematics have not changed. The numbers still favor our extinction. But mathematics cannot account for what Reyes did. Mathematics cannot predict the actions of individuals who refuse to accept the calculations. I stand on the eastern wall as the sun sets over the ash plains, and I watch the alien tide gathering for another assault. My hand throbs where the bones are slowly knitting. My body aches with wounds I have not had time to properly treat. My mind carries the weight of everyone I have lost and everyone I will lose before this ends. But I am alive. We are alive. And while we are alive, we can fight. That is what it means to hold the line against 40,000 Xenos with 0 ammunition. It means finding ammunition. It means finding allies. It means finding the thing inside you that refuses to die even when dying is the only rational choice. It means losing friends and gaining purpose and understanding that the two are not the same but are not entirely separate either. The clicking grows louder. The assault is coming. I check my weapon, confirm my position, and wait. This time, when they come, I will be ready. This time I have something to shoot back with, and that makes all the difference.